So being in a place of giving up, being nice to yourself in the process, acknowledging that there is a creator, that helps. Acknowledging that there is something to reach for, yes. And then the inventory thing, if you have come into alignment with who you really are, and you are taking inventory from the perspective of your inner being, you are adoring yourself and blessing yourself for every resistant thing that you ever lived, because it's what's brought you to this powerful place of desire.
Yes, and that's been my experience with it, is that these things that were once programs, misunderstood programming that I was living out, now they've become these things I savor that have woken me up to be where I am today. And my feeling has been from observing your...
We want to hear every word that you have to say, but if you were co-creating, as you are with us now, with those who put those steps into place, and you were standing next to them as they lived each one of those steps, you would have understood where they were, and you would have had the experience of that before you moved to the next step. But anytime someone's standing in a place they don't want to be, and they're trying to acknowledge all of these steps, you misunderstand almost every single one of them, because you're not where the person who wrote the step was when they wrote the step.
Right.
Isn't that interesting? That's why it's so helpful to have your own inner being who knows what step you're in.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
I guess my question would be for clarification on your perception of doing inventory work in general. It's been my read of Abraham's teachings that don't look here, look there. You don't spend too much time on that thought. You're manifesting in that thought.
We talked about that here today,
right? Because
we're talking about Esther and her segment intending. So if you're doing that inventory work, what kind of segment intending are you doing?
Well,
can you give us an example, and try not to fix it the way you think we want to hear it?
Okay.
Do some legitimate or authentic inventory work on something that you actually worked on.
Perfect example, I guess, would be I have a business. I'm an entrepreneur. I have a vocal program. I teach singing, and I have a school for singing. And we've been growing. The program's growing abundantly. And whenever I'm surrendered into alignment with allowing things to flow, and I'm not from Tim's ego micromanaging things, incredible things happen. Yeah. And I noticed recently that my ego had attached to the idea of growth, in that I was so gung-ho attached to this idea of growth that when we had a stretch of less growth for a few weeks, I got into this fear state.
There are so many things that we want to say to you. Of course your ego is attached to the idea of growth. Step one caused you to ask for it. It's not just whatever it is you're calling your ego that's attached to it. It's your inner being and all of us. We are so certain of your growth, and we will not take our eyes off of your expansion. And we are gathering all of the cooperative components, and you want to call that egotistical?
Well,
we would call it source energy calling you to your natural state of being.
And through what felt like to me, what I did was I sat down and I thought, oop, Tim, I felt there's a disturbance in the force, universe, what's bothering me? And the universe went, well look at how your ego's attached to this idea of growth, Tim. You're focusing on growth, which is not in alignment with focusing on the true thing that's the most high vibrating thing to do with your business,
well,
which
you
is
said
to be
about
of
10
service to
things
others.
that we don't agree with.
Oh, okay.
Really? Growth is something that your evil ego wants?
Yes, it wants to own it. It wants to own it.
And it's not something that your inner being knows is natural. We just want to tell you something really powerful here. You came from non-physical with the specific intention of coming into an environment where desires would expand. And you knew that as the contrast caused you to ask for something that you weren't living yet, that your inner being would jump all over that and call you to it. Everything that we are all about is about the natural, unequivocal expansion of the universe. Don't get crossways of that and start calling it bad things like egotistical, non-spiritual attachment to stuff. Yikes.
That feels to me, when I realized this Growth had been a little bit less for a few weeks. I felt this disturbance, this fear came up in me. I sat down, meditated, I asked what this was. I realized I was growing attached to this idea. I surrendered to the idea, and I said, universe, I give my alignment to you, and then abundance started again. It was an instantaneous shift.
Well, we're happy that abundance started again.
I'm just saying it was a moment, it was an example of me from an egoic energy, from filling my label.
You're not going to win us over to demonizing the ego.
Okay.
Because we know these things to be for sure. You came into this body to have expansion, and life just causes that to happen. And your inner being is all over your expanded being and is calling you to it. And you can call it all kinds of things. You can call it egotistical. We call it coming home to who you really are. Coming home to who you really are. And it's interesting how many things that humans learn along their physical trail, even when they're really wanting to embrace who they really are, where they keep blaming themselves for where they are. That's the whole point of forgiveness. That's the whole point of letting go. That's the whole point in letting go and letting God. You got to not be mad at yourself ever about anything, you see. Because the minute you are, if you're upset because you didn't figure it out sooner, or you're upset because you're not doing it as well as you want to do it now, you're crossways of your inner being, and you're introducing unnecessary resistance into the equation that isn't letting you go to who you really are. And then you say, oh, this is uncomfortable. It must be my ego. And we say it's uncomfortable because you're not allowing yourself to be the fullness that you really are. So just to shake you up a little bit, we're going to call your inner being, your egotistical inner being who's trying to draw egotistical you into the wholeness of who you egotistically are meant to be. You come as a thinker, you come as a processor, and that requires a personality and a focus and a point of attraction. A personality that requires an ego. You have to stand in some sense of beingness in order to have any kind of a comparative experience. And the comparative experience that you're having from your inner being's point of view is never wrong. It's always just right, because you never get it done and you can't get it wrong. And the reason it's never wrong is because it's never done. So it's just a constant molding yourself. And so really what you're doing is life is causing you to expand, and then you're just wanting to let yourself keep up with your expansion. Humans fight their own expansion all the time and give it all kinds of ridiculous labels as you fight your own expansion, you see. So whatever process you were doing, as you process through that and stop doing that, then you come back into alignment.
So process of inventory is you don't encourage it in any way.
Here's
really.
what we say about that process of inventory. It's natural. Life comes at you, you notice it. That's the process of inventory. Like that, don't like that. Like that, don't like that. Like that, don't like that. And during that process of inventory, you're putting all kinds of things into your vortex, and your inner being is saying, yep, you want that, you want that, you want that, you are that, you are that, you are that, you are that. So that process of inventory is really what we call step one. So step one causes step two to then happen. Your inner being just stands in all of that you've asked for. And then step three, we just have a shorter program than the 12 steps. Step three is where you just relax and allow yourself to move in the direction of what you're asking for. And step four is you just get really good at that. And step five is you're so good at it that even though you're back in a process of sifting and sorting again, you're not mad at yourself because you understand it's the way the universe works. If it weren't for variety, you couldn't choose anything. And if you couldn't choose anything, you couldn't be a deliberate creator. And if you couldn't deliberately create, then there wouldn't be any way for you to have satisfaction. Esther said to someone the other day, who was someone very dear to her, who was guiding somebody else very dear to her. And she said, let's ask Abraham about this, because there were things that were out of whack that Esther couldn't quite get to the bottom of. She couldn't quite figure out what was the best way to explain this. And we said, satisfaction comes from only one place. And that's you moving in the direction of your desire. That's you going home to something that you've already vibrationally become. Somebody else cannot identify what those things are. Parents who want to tell their kids what they should do, your kids, they might do it because you're big and mean and withhold good stuff. But they don't feel satisfaction in meeting your goals for them. They only feel satisfaction meeting their own goals for themselves. And then we said, never get between someone and what they want. By saying what you want doesn't count, you need to want what I want you to want. And so all kinds of people have been in situations with people who have wanted to control them, because a lot of people, the way they think that they're going to live a good life is by controlling the people in their life. And some people give into that, and then they cover up that dysfunction with alcohol or with drugs, because they're not feeling any satisfaction, because the powerful people in their life aren't allowing it. And so they get sort of broken down to the point that they're just trying to soothe the discord, because they can't figure out a way to get into alignment with who they are. And then in time, as they get into alignment with who they are, they begin to feel better. But until you're willing to let loose of all control of all other people and let your quest to come into alignment with the fullness of who you are, which is everything that you're about. We know that for sure. It's everything that you're about. It's what you teach. It's what you know. We're just specifically, very specifically answering these very precise questions that you're presenting here.
Thank you. Yeah.
So, egotistical you. You were so bold, you were so egotistical, that you dared to say, I'm going to go into a physical experience, and I'm going to experience a lot of contrast, and I'm not going to like any of it, and I'm going to let it get big enough that, first of all, it's going to make a great big vibrational reality for me, and next of all, I'm going to really feel the pinch of not going home. I'm really going to feel the discord of not letting me be me, to the point that I'm really going to break down. They don't need to make a step for that. Life does that to you. I'm just going to break down. I'm just going to break down. And then I'm going to cover it up for a while as best I can. And then all the things that are involved with that are going to be my experience. It's just going to get worse and worse and worse and worse and worse, because that's the way it does. But in all of that, I'm going to ask and 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 ask. Inventory, 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 inventory. And then I'm going to let go. I'm going to let go, not of my ego. I'm not going to let go of my desires. I'm not going to let go of who I became. I'm going to let go of the resistance I practiced in order to survive.
Ooh.
And then I'm going to start coming back into my own. And my inner being's going to love me. And that's going to feel weird to me, because I'm not used to that.
I just got goosebumps.
I'm not used to that. I'm not used to really letting myself be loved, because I came from an environment that didn't love itself, and so couldn't love me. So I began to feel really not loved, and I couldn't stand that, because I knew I was supposed to be loved, and something was really jacked up with that. But now I'm out in the clear, and now I understand this. Yeah.